Today, we are lucky enough to be joined by Ryan C. Weiss. Ryan is the author of Optics, Aligning People and Process to Accelerate Performance.
Teaching Lean Six Sigma. I was teaching the traditional 4-week black belt training. And there was one particular slide that said how to change, or the three things need to change. And there was a triangle, and it said tools, skills, and mindset. So there's three things that are required to change: tools, skills, and mindset. And when I would get to that slide, here I was teaching 4 weeks of content, and I would get to this slide and I was like, I guess it's obvious, right? Like, what else are you going to say about this slide? And our twins were about 6 or 7 years old at the time. We made a trip to Henry Dorley Zoo in Omaha, Nebraska. And my kids were looking at the orangutan enclosure, watching the orangutan. And I was reading a plaque on the wall about an orangutan who was no longer alive at the time, but there's this big plaque on the wall. And it talked about Fu Manchu, the orangutan, and how he kept escaping from the zoo. And the head zookeeper, the lead zookeeper, was all upset as his employees. Why are you being so careless? Why are the orangutans escaping? Why do they keep getting out of the cage? Who's being careless and leaving the doors unlocked? Until one day, one of the junior zookeepers is watching as Fu Manchu goes over to the door, starts fiddling around with the lock. The door pops open, and Fu Manchu and the other orangutans get out and run around the zoo. So it brought me back. So my kids are watching the orangutans, having fun, whatever. And I'm sitting there thinking about a PowerPoint slide. 3 things needed to change: tools, skills, and mindset. And I started thinking about Fu Manchu, and I started thinking about, they sedated him, right? So he gets out of the cage, they sedate him. They're like, how is he getting out? And they found that he had taken a piece of wire from one of the lights overhead, broken it off, used that as a lockpick to get out of the cage. And then
the orangutan is doing this.
The orangutan. Yeah, the orangutan.
Wow.
So I'm like, I'm the original orangutan. I actually have an orangutan suit in my closet that I use for Halloween or stuff sometimes. I even use it for like a keynote speech sometimes. Right? Like, when we think about this, the orangutan broke off a piece of wire, opened the lock to that door with the piece of wire, and then he hid it from the zookeepers by putting it by his gum line like a retainer.
Wow.
So this is people can Google this. You can look up Fu Manchu the orangutan, read about this story. So he had a tool. He needed a tool to get out of the cage. That piece of wire that he took from the light. The second thing he needed was the skills. So I've often shared this story that you could give a key to a zebra. Just imagine for a moment, if you gave a key to a zebra, what would the zebra do with it?
Nothing.
He might sniff it, right? He might look at it, right. But he's not doing anything with it. You could give him the key to unlock his cage. And the zebra might want to get out of his cage. He might have the tool to get out of his cage, but he doesn't have the skills. So the orangutan, Fu Manchu, had the skills and he had a tool. The third thing, the top of that pyramid, the top of that triangle, was you've got to have the mindset. And when you think about Fu Manchu, if he was happy eating bananas and having someone clean up after him, which is a pretty comfortable life, if he's happy with that, he would never have gotten out of the cage. But he had such a strong mindset that not only did he find the tools, he taught himself to be a locksmith, and he figured out how to get out of the cage. And so I've told this story probably dozens, maybe hundreds plus times over the past 20 plus years of my life. And so I've become known as sort of the orangutan guy, that when you think about continuous improvement, if one of those 3 things is missing, they took away that tool, they took away that piece of wire, and Fu Manchu never escaped again. But you need to have all 3 of those things. If you give your team the tools, and I've had leaders tell me, my team has the tools. If you give them the skills, we've invested in training for them. I had one CEO tell me a while back, my team just doesn't have the mindset. I give them the tools, I give them the skills. And I asked him a question I thought was going to kill me. I thought like this will be the last conversation we ever have. My question to him was, do you hire people with bad mindsets, or do they get that way over time?
Wow.
And he hired.
Did he just kind of pause like we just paused, and he had that kind of wow moment like I
Oh,
just had?
oh, he did. And then he looked at me and he's like, "All right, send me that scope of work. We got to figure something out."